In this video, I'm going to show you some real data that explains what the average calories burned per day by men and women are. I'll explain to you why the idea that the average woman needs 2,000 calories a day or a man needs 2,500 is pretty problematic, and give you a better way to think about our energy needs. And I'm also going to show you 5 key factors that explain the variation in human energy needs, as well as 3 reasons why calculating your own calorie needs can be really, really tricky. Hey, I'm Lindsay, the founder of FitFolk, and in today's video, we're going to break down this myth that the average woman needs 2,000 calories and the average man needs 2,500 calories. Now, I hear these numbers all the time, and when I started working with clients to lose weight, I often ran into this problem where a woman will tell me that, well, obviously I use 2,000 calories. If I want to lose 1 pound, I'll have to eat 1,500 calories, and if I want to lose 2 pounds a week, I'll have to eat 1,000 calories. And 1,000 calories is below the BMR of pretty much every woman. 1,500 calories is below the BMR of a lot of women, maybe a third. And these averages are really steering people wrong. So a couple of years ago, I did a whole bunch of research into this, and I came across an appendix which actually is from the American Dietary Reference Intakes, and it gives us a much, much better idea of actually the fact that the average calorie needs of American these days are higher than these numbers, but also that they have a bell-shaped distribution, which is what I'm going to show you today. So first up, these numbers in the sample of about 600 Americans that was in the dietary reference intake, actual doubly labeled water, so really accurate, real data of real Americans, they found that the typical woman, the median woman, came out closer to 2,350, and the median man came out closer to 3,050 calories a day. So that's the average, really, the median, the one in the middle. But it's much, much more complex than this. And you'll see that the variation is absolutely huge. And some women can have calorie needs as low as 1,500, whereas some might have them right up around 3,500. For men, it typically ranges from right down near 2,000, maybe a little bit low, all the way up to 5,000. And we're going to talk about 5 reasons why these energy needs vary now. Alrighty, in this section, I'm going to give you 5 factors that affect calorie needs to try and help explain to you why these energy needs are so all over the place and why we can't be too simplistic when we're trying to estimate our own energy needs. Now, the first one is sex. So whether you're a man or a woman is going to affect how many calories you need. And what people don't understand is that even for the same weight, if you take a typical man that weighs the same weight as a typical woman, you would expect the man to have a calorie needs about 500 calories higher than the woman. And this is because of their hormonal makeup and just their general composition. So at the same weight, the woman is likely to have more fat than the man, and the man is likely to have slightly larger organs, which all of this together corresponds to a man having on average 500 calories a day more energy needs at the same given weight than a woman. Next up, we have age. Age is the smallest predictor of variation in energy needs, but it's relevant nonetheless. And basically what happens as people get older, they tend to have lower energy needs. This is really hard to work out in the data, but some of it comes down to activity level, and some of it just comes down to kind of changes in our body, a slight decline in muscle mass. But what we see is that over time, as people get older, they have lower energy needs. Next up, we have height. Taller people tend to use more energy than shorter people. It's a very strong correlation. It's partly to do with weight, but it actually on some level has to do with your surface area. So a taller person has more kind of external surface area, more skin to dissipate heat, which translates into higher energy expenditure at any given weight. So taller people have a little bit easier time losing weight because they have more energy to play with. Next up, we have weight. People who weigh more tend to expend more energy. This is pretty simple physics that for any given movement, they're carrying around more weight. So when they move, it costs them more energy. And over the course of the day, this translates to more energy use. They also tend to have slightly larger organs, which also increases their BMR and means they have more energy to play with when it comes to weight loss. And last up, we have activity level. This is by far the most complex, and people try to generalize about it in calculations equations, but it is very, very hard to work out because it includes things like fidgeting, posture control, what type of job you have, how much exercise you're doing, and this all plays into the strongest factor for variation in our energy needs. Some people have really, really high activity level burn masses and masses of energy, and it's going to make it much, much easier for them to lose weight. Some people are unlucky with genetics, with posture, they've got a desk job, and they just have very, very little energy to play with, and that is going to make it super hard for them to lose weight. Okay, last up, I'm going to talk about 3 reasons why this is tricky. Now, if you've been using tracking calories or macros to lose weight, I will bet my bottom dollar that the numbers that I've just shown you seem very high. For most people, those averages are going to seem very high, and it's going to be very frustrating to a woman who's, eating 1,400 calories a day to lose weight to think that the average woman could need 2,300. And there are 3 reasons why this is really tricky, and you need to kind of both be patient and be realistic about what is going on here, because there's a couple of things that throw a spanner in the works. So, first up, calorie calculators are not in any way accurate. So if you've gone onto a calorie calculator and you've estimated what your calorie needs are on a calculator, you need to understand that that estimation could be easily out by plus or minus 500. Simply because what they do is they estimate your BMR via the Mifflin-St. Jean or whatever, an equation, which is quite accurate. But then they multiply it by this activity factor. And this is a complete thumbsuck in the wind. People have no idea about this number, and it'll typically be a range from 1.1 to 1.9. But if you look at the data, it's absolutely all over the place. And it's not necessarily to do with how much you exercise. A lot of it has to do with whether you sit in a desk job or not, how much you fidget, which is purely kind of genetic, and your posture control, another genetic factor. So some people, you just feed them more food and they burn it off, whereas other people, they just are really unlucky with their energy expenditure. And we need to understand this and be very aware that calorie calculators are simply not accurate in any way, because the activity factor that you're supposed to plug in cannot be measured without laboratory testing. Next up, we're just terrible at tracking. So every study shows this, and to give you an example, there was a recent study in the UK where they got people to track what they were eating for a few weeks, and then they tested it against some doubly labeled water data. And what they found was that the women who thought they were eating, their tracking said they were eating 1,500 calories, actually turned out they were eating closer to 2,300. And for the men, they thought, based on their tracking, that they were eating 2,000 calories, but actually they were eating closer to 3,000 calories. So unless you are putting every single gram of food that you eat on a food scale and then putting it in an app, do not pretend that your tracking is accurate, because all the data tells us that we are terrible at being able to track our calories. And lastly, our energy needs adapt. So if you've been on a diet for a while, if you've recently lost a bunch of weight, so let's say you've recently lost 30 pounds, we can expect that for those 30 pounds, your energy needs will have adapted down by 500 calories per day, because in the process of losing that weight, you've got a bunch of hormonal signals in your system. Leptin is saying to your brain, it's saying, you're losing weight, we need to protect our fat mass, and what it will do is it will downgrade your energy expenditure. And this is very clear in a whole bunch of studies that when people lose weight, their energy needs decline. So this is something to be aware of, that as you go down and lose more and more weight, you often need to be more aggressive than this data would tell you, because your body has adapted and it's trying to conserve your fat mass to protect itself from starving. So I hope you enjoyed that. The data is really complex, but I just find from a lot of my clients understanding the fact that there's a really broad bell-shaped distribution, and that the personal data about you could be really varied. So your very best bet is to do some tracking, see how that progresses, and be very patient, because there's also a lot going on with the scale, with water weight fluctuations and whatnot, that can kind of throw you off when actually you're doing a really good job. I hope you enjoyed that, and if you did, make sure you subscribe to the channel and check out our email list for a bunch of free weight loss resources. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you jump on the email list and get our 5 simple strategies to start losing weight cheat sheet.